May 13th, 2015. That morning, an 18-year-old girl stepped out of her home, just like she did every other school day. She was on her way to school, carrying the same hopes she always did. Big dreams, a quiet determination, and a future that was only just beginning. She wanted to become a teacher. Not for fame, not for money, but to return to her community one day and educate children who grew up the way she did. But by evening, she never came back home. When her family realized something was wrong and began searching for her, it was already too late. What had happened to this 18-year-old girl was so brutal, so disturbing, that it shook all of Sri Lanka to its core. And the most tragic part? The very people who were supposed to protect her, police officers, politicians, and powerful figures, were allegedly involved in shielding the truth. This is the story of Shivlokanathan Vidya, a young girl whose death didn't just destroy one family, but exposed the dark cracks inside an entire system. Shivlokanathan Vidya was born on November 25, 1996, on a small island called Pungadudavu, located in Sri Lanka's northern province. It's not a place many people outside the region have even heard of, and that's because it's incredibly isolated. Pungadudavu is a tiny island, home mostly to Tamil families. For years, only a handful of families lived there, and Vidya's family was one of them. But her life, even from a young age, was never easy. During the Sri Lankan Civil War, violence spread across the country. Entire communities were uprooted, and Vidya's family was forced to leave their home and live in internment camps. Imagine growing up surrounded by uncertainty, fear, and displacement before life has even had a chance to begin. It wasn't until 2010, when conditions finally stabilized, that her family was able to return to Pungadudavu. And that's when Vidya's life finally found some sense of normalcy. She was a quiet, disciplined, and deeply focused girl. Her mother Saraswati, her brother Nishanthan, who was 22, and her sister Nishanthini, who was 24, all cared deeply for her. Vidya was pursuing her advanced level studies, and she never wavered from her goal. She wanted to become a teacher. Her dream was simple: to give back to the same community that had shaped her, to educate children and create opportunities where very few existed. A beautiful dream, a painfully innocent one. Vidya was known for being responsible. She almost never traveled alone. She was always punctual, always careful, and usually walked to school with someone else. But on May 13th, 2015, for reasons no one can fully explain, she left for school alone. And that single decision would become the final decision of her life. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, who could possibly have such a twisted mindset? Who could look at an 18-year-old girl and commit something so horrific? Some of you may already know where this case is headed. And if you don't, what comes next will explain why this case still haunts Sri Lanka to this day. Think you can figure it out? Let me be very clear. This was not just a crime committed by one individual. This case involved 7 perpetrators, 7 men, and none of it was spontaneous. Everything was planned, calculated, and set up in advance. The main accused was Mahalingam Shashikumar, widely known as Swiss Kumar. He earned that nickname because he had returned from Switzerland, claiming to have international connections. And what was his plan? To record the assault and sell the footage to an international exploitation network. Yes, you heard that right. To these men, a human life wasn't a person anymore. It was a product, something to be used, recorded, and sold for money. Alongside Swiss Kumar were several accomplices. And I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any names. Pupalisingam Jayakumar, also known as Ravi. Pupalisingam Navakumar, known as Sundil. Valangam Shashidharan, Swiss Kumar's brother. Pildan Chandrakishan. Shiva Deshashan. Dushyanthan. Jayatharan Kokilan. All of them were locals, people from the same area where Vidya lived. Just think about how terrifying that is. The very people living around you, secretly planning something this horrific. They were organized. They were patient. And their target was a young, innocent schoolgirl who only wanted to build a future for herself. On May 13th, 2015, at 7:25 a.m., Vidya left her home wearing her school uniform, bag in hand. For her, it was just another normal day. Usually, she went to school with friends, but that morning, for reasons no one can fully explain, she was alone. And along her route, those 7 men were already waiting. She was abducted before she could react. There was no time to scream, no chance to ask for help. In less than a minute, her entire world changed. She was taken to an abandoned, isolated house, far from anyone who could hear or help her. What happened there is deeply disturbing, even to think about. She was completely overpowered, physically and emotionally. The worst part is that the crime was recorded because the perpetrators intended to profit from it. Vidya knew she would not survive, yet she had no way to escape. After the perpetrators were done, they restrained her and left her there. The evidence later found shocked even experienced investigators. By 3 p.m., when Vidya still hadn't returned home, her mother Sarasvati felt that something was terribly wrong. She went out searching immediately. Neighbors were asked. Relatives were called. Everyone was informed. But Vidya was nowhere to be found. As the evening approached, fear turned into panic. Finally, the family decided to go to the police station. And that's where another tragedy began. Because once again, the system failed. The family was failed by the system. They were sent from one police station to another. No one took them seriously. No one acted with urgency. It wasn't until 11 p.m. that a missing person report was finally registered. By then, 16 critical hours had already been lost. On the morning of May 14, 2015, at first light, Sarasvati, Nishanthan, and several neighbors began searching again. This time, they weren't alone. They were joined by the family's pet dog, Jammy. Animals often sense when something is wrong, and Jammy seemed restless, sniffing the ground, moving quickly. Suddenly, the dog found one of Vidya's shoes. From there, Jammy ran straight toward an abandoned house. That's where Vidya's body was found. When Nishanthan saw his sister, he was completely shattered. Her hands and feet were restrained. Her body showed signs of severe trauma. The scene was unbearable for any family member to witness. In that moment, the family lost everything. When the police were finally informed and the investigation started, what emerged was even more disturbing. The condition of the body made it clear. This was not a random act. It was planned, brutal, and organized. The post-mortem confirmed that Vidya had been assaulted and later killed by strangulation. Her school uniform ribbon had been used to restrain her hands, a detail so chilling that it shocked the entire country. But this was only the beginning of the real story. As soon as the investigation began, local villagers captured Swiss Kumar themselves. Public anger was intense. The community came together, found him, and handed him over to the police. This happened on May 15th. But then came a twist that almost no one could believe. Just 2 days later, on May 17th, Swiss Kumar escaped from police custody. A murder accused, caught by villagers, walked out of a police station. How did this happen? Because power stepped in. Senior police officers, politicians, and influential individuals helped him escape. At that point, this was no longer just a murder case. It became a story of institutional failure, corruption, and abuse of power. A senior police officer, Dig Lalith J. Singha, was later accused of helping Swiss Kumar escape. But it didn't stop there. A state minister and a law faculty dean with personal ties to Swiss Kumar were also accused of coordinating and applying pressure behind the scenes. These were people in authority, people entrusted with protecting the public. Instead, they allegedly used their power to protect a criminal. Public anger had reached a point where the system could no longer stay silent. On May 19th, Swiss Kumar was spotted at a public meeting in Colombo. This time, he was rearrested. Now, the investigation was running under intense public pressure. 2 officers played a crucial role in pushing the case forward. Inspector Nishantha Silva, ASPB, Athisara. They took the case seriously and carried out a detailed and methodical investigation. Because of their efforts, by May 18th, the remaining accused were also arrested. As evidence was collected and witness statements were recorded, the case moved toward trial. A trial at bar was established in the High Court. All 7 accused faced 41 charges, including abduction, criminal conspiracy, and multiple related offenses. Inside the courtroom, one voice stood out the most. Vidya's mother, Sarasvati, completely broken, yet standing firm. She demanded justice for her daughter. Outside the courtroom, protests erupted. The public demanded the harshest punishment possible. On September 26, 2017, the verdict was finally announced. All 7 accused were found guilty on all major charges. They were sentenced to rigorous imprisonment, and ordered to pay financial compensation to the victim's family. For the family, this verdict brought a sense of accountability. But justice was still incomplete. The case also exposed corruption within the system. The senior officer who helped Swiss Kumar escape was later convicted in February 2025. He received 4 years of imprisonment and a financial penalty. Many questioned whether this punishment truly matched the gravity of his actions. Another officer involved remains absconding to this day. Legal action was initiated against political figures as well, but most avoided serious consequences. As of 2025, the case is still not fully closed. An appeal hearing in the Supreme Court is scheduled for November 2025. Due to translation delays and legal technicalities, the proceedings have been repeatedly postponed. The sentences have been announced, but the final execution of justice remains pending. Vidya's mother, Saraswati, has never truly recovered from the loss. No parent ever does. Her siblings carry a wound that will never fully heal. But today, their fight is no longer just for Vidya. It is for every girl who feels unsafe, and for every family failed by the system. Vidya was young. She had dreams. She had a future. And while justice has been delayed, the world continues to wait for it to be fully delivered.